Hi, I'm Sarah from catchptsd.com, making PTSD understandable. PTSD is a whole gamut of symptoms which come under the umbrella of post-traumatic stress disorder. The symptoms of PTSD are specific to each person. So whereas you might be deemed to have PTSD because of certain symptoms, somebody else may have completely different symptoms. And somebody else may have a whole other set of symptoms entirely. The symptoms depend on what happened to you to create the autonomic response in your body. The most important thing to know about PTSD is that whatever symptoms you suffer from, they are generally unexplained. If you lose somebody that you love very much and you feel an enormous grief, then that wouldn't be termed PTSD. You're aware of where that feeling is coming from, and it's generally a rational response. However, when people have PTSD, they have emotions, feelings, or thoughts which seem to just come out of nowhere with absolutely no reason for them, which makes it even more disabling because there's no context in which to understand it. It's also very difficult for the people around you to understand it because you're suddenly angry or crying or grief-stricken, or you can't be bothered to even get out of bed in the morning. But then the day before, you were fine. And these symptoms do not make sense to the sufferer or to the people who live with the sufferer. But they are a clue, a flag, trying to make you realize that something happened in the past, something that you've either completely forgotten or you didn't realize what kind of impact it had on you at the time. And those feelings, those sensations, those thoughts are rushing up inside of you, almost hijacking you. Sometimes the symptoms are not severe. It might just be irritation rather than anger. It might just be sadness rather than depression. It might just be nervousness rather than anxiety. Equally, it might be rage, black cloud depression, or a panic attack where your heart is pumping so fast you fear you're going to have a heart attack or stop breathing. And this brings us to the question, is PTSD physical or psychological? Well, it's both. Sometimes it's both together, sometimes separately. But it's possible for a chronic pain or a disability even to be PTSD. I give you an example from World War II, where a soldier was in a trench advancing towards the German lines, and his friend was the scout going ahead. The friend was seized by the Nazis, and this soldier was in the ditch with 3 or 4 other soldiers, and he took out a grenade, intending to throw it towards the German lines, but was afraid that he might kill his friend. He was also very afraid that he would reveal their position, which might mean that everybody in the ditch would die as well, rather than just his friend. So in the end, he didn't throw the grenade, and his friend was killed. He made it home, though, and over the next few months, his hand suddenly closed into a very painful fist, and it was impossible to open his fingers, and he had absolutely no idea why. He visited a trail of doctors, and nobody understood. And eventually he tried clinical hypnotherapy, and in a deeply relaxed state, he was taken straight back to that ditch and shown that he felt enormous guilt about letting his friend be killed to save himself and the others. His body showed him he'd never processed the guilt, and so he had closed his hand up painfully tight like he was holding a grenade until he paid attention, until he understood. And by going back to that ditch in that deeply relaxed state, he was able to understand that he had had Hobson's choice, really. There was nothing he could do. He may well have thrown the grenade and killed his own friend, but equally, that may well have meant that all the people who were with him, including himself, would also die. Just being able to rationalize that in the subconscious state and being able to understand that he'd had to make a split-second decision was enough for him to release the guilt of the dilemma. All paralysis in his hand disappeared. And that's a case history from a book called Hypnotherapy of War Neuroses, by John Watkins. Sometimes a PTSD sufferer may have severe pain in the ears, or constant migraines, or a tremor in the hand, making it impossible to work until they resolve the troubling hidden memory. Sometimes it might be something that they endured as a child in a particular part of the body, which is recreating the same symptom, the same pain, like a flag, a clue. Through the use of clinical hypnotherapy, where you can be taken back to whichever moment caused that symptom, whether it's psychological or whether it's physical, you can be shown what it means and why you felt that way for so long. And just by bringing the reason, the feeling, the sensation, the pain into the conscious state, it's moving from the subconscious to the conscious. And everything in the conscious can be rationalized and understood. As soon as it's understood, it no longer plays this game of charades with you. Hypnotherapy is really psychological archaeology. If you feel there may be something fueling your symptoms and you would like to find out what it is and eliminate those symptoms, have a look at catchptsd.com and contact one of us. We're here to help.